On December 6, 1865, an amendment was ratified. It's the amendment that ended slavery and which was signed by Abraham Lincoln himself. Of course, I am referring to the 13th Amendment. Many people mistakenly believe that the 14th Amendment was responsible for ending slavery because of the line, quote, "No state may deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws," end quote, the Constitution. But the 14th Amendment was mostly about expanding civil rights and fixing certain government structures. Meanwhile, 32 of the 13th Amendment's 43 words outright outlaw slavery and voluntary servitude except as punishment for crimes, while the other 11 give Congress the power to enforce the amendment with appropriate legislation. This isn't to say that the 14th Amendment isn't significant. On the contrary, it's one of the most important amendments and almost certainly the most versatile one. In modern times, the protections of the Bill of Rights apply to cases concerning states as much as they do to cases regarding the federal government. But it wasn't always this way. The First Amendment only outright prohibits the federal government from taking its respective liberties away from the people, not the state governments. So for a long time, it was basically left up to each state to decide how to implement them. But there's more to the Bill of Rights, isn't there? Take the Fifth Amendment, for example, where there is no language specifying who must respect what's written therein. It might seem like this amendment applies to both the states and the federal government, but prior to the 14th Amendment's ratification, the court actually decided against this interpretation. You see, the framers wrote the Constitution and Bill of Rights with neutral and somewhat vague language so that the two documents could remain relevant as the nation aged. However, there are some cases in which the court can't reach a verdict solely based on the wording of the Constitution. When this happens, the court will take into account what the intent of the framers was when writing the relevant part of the Constitution, relevant traditions throughout history and in prior cases, or a mixture of both. This is what happened in the case of Barron v. Baltimore, 1833, in which the court ruled that a clause of the Fifth Amendment did not apply to the states because, quote, "It was intended solely as a limitation on the exercise of power by the government of the United States, and is not applicable to the legislation of the states." End quote. Purcell. This case, and others like it, limited the reach of the Bill of Rights to the federal government. That is, until the 14th Amendment was ratified on July 9, 1868, and the Supreme Court began to incorporate the Bill of Rights. Incorporation is the process of taking specific parts of the Bill of Rights and applying them to the states through the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment. There are two types of due process: substantive, which has to do with the constitutional legitimacy of the law or government action at hand, and procedural, which has to do with the process through which a person is arrested and taken to court. Both types have incorporated multiple amendments in the Bill of Rights and expanded protections for people all around America. It may come as a great surprise that the Bill of Rights' purpose has changed so drastically since its inception, but this isn't an isolated occurrence in the Constitution. In fact, the famous State of the Union address was never specifically meant to be broadcast publicly. Section 3 of Article 2 of the Constitution instructs that the President give Congress information regarding the state of the Union from time to time, along with any advice they deem important. But nowhere does it state that this must be a public occurrence. The first public broadcast of the State of the Union address was done by President Coolidge in 1923 via radio, and the public broadcast of the State of the Union address has since become tradition. Additionally, there are two obscure presidential powers present in this same section: the powers to convene and adjourn Congress. These are not very well known because they are rarely used. The power to convene Congress was last used in 1948, while the power to adjourn Congress has never actually been used. The Constitution, despite how old it is ever-changing in a sense. Over the years, some clauses have become forgotten and obscured, while others shine prominently. But no matter how much the interpretation of the Constitution changes throughout history, it will always be the foundation of the American government. So remember to verify what you know about the Constitution and share your knowledge. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.